right, so we're going to get started here. I'm really excited to share some of this, our work with you and what Tom is doing with our Ice House Entrepreneurial Mindset program. I'm going to jump right in. I'm going to talk briefly about the Ice House Entrepreneurial Mindset program. Tom's going to talk about how he's used it at the city of Albuquerque, and then we'll leave some time at the end for questions. As a follow-up, we can do the questions. If you want to turn your camera on, that's fine. If you want to just type questions and answers anonymously into the question and answer thing, that's fine too. We will send you these slides following the presentation, so don't worry too much about taking all kinds of notes. Tom and I will stitch both presentations together and send them to you in a follow-up email. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in. As I said, my name is Gary Schoniger. I'm the founder and the CEO of the Entrepreneurial Learning Initiative. So our basic idea is that the world has changed in ways that now require everyone to think like an entrepreneur. And I've italicized that word think because it doesn't mean they need to start a business. We just need to learn how to think like an entrepreneur, how to recognize and solve problems. Some of the challenges that we face are what is it that you think about when you think of the word entrepreneur? Most people have that word either tethered to the idea of a high growth Silicon Valley type entrepreneur, or they think of a Main Street shop owner, someone who owns a coffee shop or something like that. And there's so much more underneath that to the entrepreneurial mindset I'd like to share with you. So for a simple definition of entrepreneurship, we think of it as a discovery process. So think of the entrepreneurial process much like you would think of a detective trying to solve a mystery, right? There's not really they're searching for problem solution fit. So it's just, for a quick and broad definition, we think of it as a discovery process. We define the mindset as the underlying beliefs and assumptions that influence our behavior. So these are the two ideas we want to mesh together. You develop an entrepreneurial mindset by practicing this entrepreneurial discovery process. So quick background, this all started in 2008. I was hired by the Cisco Entrepreneur Institute in San Jose to create content for Cisco's Entrepreneur Institute. Not only to create content, but to do a gap analysis, to analyze the entrepreneurship education ecosystem in North America and find sort of where the missing gaps are. And that proved to be a very interesting journey of discovery. It gave me a platform to go across the United States to interview. I'm going to mute. Someone's typing away over there. Okay, thank you. So one of the entrepreneurs that I got to interview for the Cisco project became my co-author of a book called Who Owns the Ice House. It's a distillation of 8 concepts that we derived from interviewing hundreds of what I'll call unlikely entrepreneurs. So what we're really seeking to understand here is, how does someone behave entrepreneurially when they don't have authority, when they don't have access to power and privilege and resources? How do the underdog entrepreneurs make things happen? So that really was the genesis, that was the inspiration for this book that I co-authored with Clifton, and it became the basis for a very powerful and provocative learning program that we created with some initial funding from the Kauffman Foundation in Kansas City. So the course takes these 8 concepts that we observed from hundreds and hundreds of interviews. I've since interviewed entrepreneurs all over the world. It started in the US. And again, I'm interested in the underdog entrepreneurs, the people who don't have the advanced degrees necessarily or access to millions in venture capital. They don't have big ideas. How do they succeed? What we were looking for are the replicable factors. Someone said, well, you know, I inherited $1 million. I'm not really interested in that story. I'm not interested in the Elon Musk story because the guy's got an IQ that's just completely out of range for us mere mortals. So here are these 8 concepts. I'm just going to tick through them very briefly. Again, these are the observations distilled into 8 concepts from hundreds of interviews. It starts with this power, what we call the power to choose. And what we hear so often from the entrepreneurs is that they're striving to accomplish something on the horizon. They're choosing sort of a future positive orientation rather than accepting things as they are. And you know, I want to be clear, they're very often not aware of this. This is not sort of a strategy that they're aware of. But the foundation of this program is the sort of the beginning is to think about, you know, what is the future I want to create? How can I contribute to the future? It's the sort of the foundation of all of these concepts. And Tom will talk more about that in a more applicable process. So the second concept that we observed is that entrepreneurs tend to look at problems as opportunities, right? And most of us learn to avoid problems, where the entrepreneur, sort of counterintuitive, they look as every problem, frustration, or unmet need they encounter, they tend to approach those problems or frustrations or unmet needs as potential opportunities, right? So this is where we see a shift in focus, right? Instead of complaining about problems, we start looking at them as potential opportunities. In all of the entrepreneurs that I've interviewed, basically it comes down to a very simple idea. The ones that fail tend to find solutions and then go looking for problems. And they tend to find solutions that are just oriented towards their own wants and needs. By contrast, the entrepreneurs that succeed are the ones that find a problem first and they validate the problem. They spend some time validating the problem, making sure this is a real problem, that they understand the problem correctly. So they do the opposite. They prime the problem first and then they create a solution. The third concept that we observed, which is also very, very powerful yet subtle, is the entrepreneurs tend to have a bias towards action that on the surface may appear to be a reckless abandon. But what the experienced entrepreneurs do is they micro experiment. They don't do a lot of intense planning. Instead, they discover through rapid, minute experimentation that doesn't cost money. It just takes maybe a little bit of time. It's a conversation. It's building a simple prototype or testing an idea very quickly and learning from the results. And so that's sort of the fourth concept we observe in the entrepreneurs, is that they tend to become lifelong self-directed learners. So recognizing problems as opportunities, testing the ideas, and learning, constantly learning, is sort of the core loop of entrepreneurial thought and process. What happens to the individual as a result of this activity is they become very resourceful. They learn how to focus their time, their resources, their money, rather than squandering it. They learn how to spend rather than invest their time, their thought, their money, what have you. And Tom will talk more about the financial literacy component, which is where that is. They learn to become very reliable They learn to connect with a broader community, and ultimately they develop the ability to persist. They develop the resilience that enables them to persist. So these are a very quick overview of the 8 concepts that the course is built around. I want to just speak for a couple of minutes about the course. What are the learning objectives for the course? The first and foremost is that we want to inspire and engage. And I'll tell you how we do that. The inspiration comes from the video case studies that are embedded in the program. We know from the scientific literature that people are much more likely to adopt a new behavior when they have relatable social models. That is to say, people who come from similar or worse circumstances who are succeeding in this domain. So there are a number of very powerful video case studies embedded in the curriculum. The engagement also comes from the awareness of opportunity. And that's one of the key factors here also. I'm writing about this in a new book, but it's the awareness of opportunity that engages the individual. And so the opposite is true. The lack of opportunity, or the perception of opportunity, disengages the individual. So that's a really important point that I just want to point out here, that it's the exposure to the awareness of opportunity that engages the participant. We also know from the psychological literature that a person who has developed an entrepreneurial mindset is able to detect opportunities even within the most opportunity-constrained environment, while a person who does not have an entrepreneurial mindset will overlook opportunities even in the most opportunity-rich environments. Very important point. So our focus is also on the mindset. This is not really a business course. This is about an entrepreneurial mindset. What are the underlying beliefs and assumptions that drives the behavior? Finding problems, solving problems, and helping bring those ideas to life. We use an experiential problem-based learning approach. It's not a lot of lecture. It's more action-oriented, more doing. Entrepreneurs tend to learn by doing. We try to connect the classroom with the community to the extent that we can, not only engaging participants to go out and get involved in the community, but also to invite entrepreneurial role models into the learning experience. And lastly, we wanted to develop a scalable solution. And what I mean by that is we wanted to design a program that did not require a subject matter expert to teach the program, right? So we require a 3-day facilitator training to deliver the program, but beyond that, you don't have to know anything about business. You don't have to have been an entrepreneur. There's no requirement there. So there are 6 basic course elements. There's content, both video and printed. There are discussion topics. We want people to then form small teams, the application assignments, which Tom will talk about in a minute, where they work in small teams to begin to identify and solve problems. They come back into the classroom to teach each other what they're learning. And then we have a reflection component where they just try to create some written reflection on what this content, what they're learning, and how they can apply it to their own lives. So that's a quick overview of the Ice House Entrepreneurial Mindset program. This has gone all over the world. It's been presented at the United Nations, at the Vatican, at the European Commission in Brussels. It's being used in middle schools, high schools, community colleges, 4-year universities, prisons, nonprofit organizations, small business development centers. One of the most astonishing deployments is what you're about to hear. In 2015, when the mayor, the former mayor of Albuquerque, came to us and said, we want to train city government workers how to think like an entrepreneur. And that's where Tom stepped into the picture. I'm going to now turn this program over to Tom Darling, who is leading Public Service University, leading the Ice House Entrepreneurial Mindset program at the city of Albuquerque. So Tom, I'm going to turn it over to you right now. Let me see if I can, there you are, make you the presenter and let you take it from there.
Okay, let me show my screen here, and can everybody see my screen?
I can see it, Tom.
Okay, let me get my, are you seeing you on top of my presentation?
I am.
Okay, let's see here. For some reason, there we go. So as Gary said, I'm Tom Darling. I'm the division manager for Public Service University at the city of Albuquerque. Public Service University is actually, we are part of the Human Resources Department at the city of Albuquerque, and we're responsible for all employee training for all 6,000 of our employees. We got a very large city government. I met several of you at the conference, Transformation and Government Conference last month. So with that, you know, we deal with all kinds of training for our employees, but what I want to talk specifically is how we're rolling this out and what kind of impact it's having. So the way the story starts is in 2015, I was the chair of the business administration program at Central New Mexico Community College. I was at the college for about 16 years. I do have an entrepreneurial background and was running the business department. And there was this idea to actually take the city of Albuquerque, take 100 employees from the city of Albuquerque and run them through a pilot program in conjunction with the community college to test what kind of impact and outcome we would get if we took these employees through this program. Mayor Barry at the time had this commitment to make Albuquerque one of the most entrepreneurial cities in the country. And so it was a good opportunity to do entrepreneurial training for city employees. It was kind of out there. Nobody had done it before. And it was an interesting test. So what we did is we actually set up courses, and we set up classes that had about 20 to 30 people in them. And over the course of 2015, we ran them through the program. Now, as a result of this pilot that I facilitated, a number of these employees actually started going back to the city and started taking some of these and applying them within their particular departments. And as a result, the mayor had requested an overview. Even though the mayor had seen the program from afar, they hadn't been through it. So we scheduled a one-day training for the mayor and the mayor's staff to basically give them an overview of the program and kind of let them know the 8 lessons, how they were being taught, how employees at the city were being directed as a result of basically thinking differently about their work, and give them kind of an idea of what the program was about in detail. As a result of that, before the day was even over, the mayor came to me and was really excited. The financial literacy piece that we have in there with the Creating Wealth, the personal branding piece, teaching people how to be reliable and thinking about their reputation, their image to the community. The piece about building a success network and building relationships with mentors and other people at the city to help people be more effective. And those lessons just above the base lessons on the power to choose and not being a victim and not feeling like you have no authority, actually realizing everybody has some type of managing authority. They got really excited about it and wanted to deploy it to all 6,000 employees. And make a long story short, they stole me away and hired me to run Public Service University with the hopes that I would take the program and we would roll it out to all of our employees. So in January 2016, I came to work at the city, and so that's the history of how we got started with this. So the problem in the public sector, the Gallup organization has shown that 30% of employees are actually fully engaged in their work, while another 40%, they show up, they come to work, they show up on time, they leave on time, they do their jobs while they're there, they go through the motions, and they get their work done. But there's also a group of 30% that are actively disengaged in their work. And that 30%, they come late, they leave early, they hide in a closet, and some of them are actually damaging the work environment and sabotaging some of the work that gets done. The disappointing fact in this is it's worse. The numbers are worse for public sector and public service. So I've been in public service a long time. First, obviously, in higher ed, and now in city government. And the one thing, and it's hard for us all to accept, but I think we can all agree, when you work for an organization where you get paid every 2 weeks, and the money continues to roll in, and even though budgets are tight, everybody gets paid. And unless you're a fireman, firefighter, a police officer, or you're picking up the trash, nobody's going to die on your watch. And sometimes what happens in public service, and this is why we get the reputation we do with the community, that when somebody asks, we have employees that are asked all the time, hey, where do you work? And some of them are afraid to say, well, I work for the city of Albuquerque. They may say, well, I'm a police officer, I'm a firefighter, I work for Public Service University. Because when we say we work for the city of Albuquerque, sometimes we see this reputation that we have in government, which is, in other words, you work for taxpayer dollars, and it takes 5 people to do one person's job, and you're lazy and you don't do much. And then, an hour later, they ask us if we can get them a job there. The truth is, we want to change that. And many of you know we have amazing people that work in our organization. But what we want to do is we want to take our people that work in our organization, and we want to teach them to engage in their work. We want to teach our supervisors and our leaders to give their employees permission, to not have permission to solve problems at the front line of their work. We want our public service employees not to have to sit around and say, that's not my job. We don't want to hear that anymore. And so part of being entrepreneurial is realizing that we all have managing authority. The garbage truck driver may not have a staff that works underneath them, but they have a route that they're responsible for. They have customers on that route. They have things that they do every day. And they see the problems that exist in the workplace every day on the front line in a way that nobody in a supervisory position can see it. And by the time a report gets back to a supervisor and we think about whether or not something's a problem, another year has gone by. We want to engage our employees in the front line of that work. So how are we deploying this at the city of Albuquerque? Well, very simply put, we're doing it in a face-to-face class setting. And there's 3 ways that we deploy this for our employees. The first one I've already spoken about was the 1-day overview for leadership. And this is really important. We do it only in 1 day because we don't want to train all of our leaders in the full program and then have them go communicate to their employees below them, hey, we want you to work harder. We want you to solve more problems. We want you to not come to us for permission. That's not the idea. The idea is we want our supervisors and our leaders to understand this is what we're getting ready to teach your employees. We're getting ready to give them permission not to have your permission every 5 minutes to solve a problem. And so that's what we did with the mayor's staff. We also have a 2-day version that we do with supervisors where we take them through the program, but we also teach them what it means to empower their employees, what it means to allow them to test their ideas, what it means to help them understand the value that they bring to the organization, and then support them as they're innovating and engaging in their work. And then, of course, the 4-day is the full-blown program that we offer to our employees. And what happens, we usually do it on a Friday. We'll have employees come in 4 Fridays in a row. And then on those Fridays, we'll go through 2 of the 8 lessons on each Friday. Not only will we go through the lessons and talk, but there's lots of interaction. We break them into teams. The size of the class ranges from about 20 to 30 employees. We put them in teams of about 5 to 6. And we do this in a cross-departmental fashion. So we open it up and we take employees from all different departments. And what they do while they're going through the curriculum is they're also working on this process called the Opportunity Discovery Canvas. Sometimes we call it a 1-page business plan, if you will. But what it is, it's a way, there's 9 steps to it where we take the employee through to identify a problem. We want employees to go identify problems in their department. We want them to validate that those problems are really problems for real people, whether it be the citizens, the customers, or the people in those departments. We want them to come up with a solution that they can test, that doesn't cost money, that uses existing resources within the organization, and then to test those. And then based on the results from testing that idea, is then we can start to think about scaling that up within a department. We want to move away. We want our employees to move away from feeling like, well, there's no more budget money, we can't solve this problem. Or I don't know how to write a proposal, that's my boss's job. The bottom line is, our frontline employees experience problems every day. And they have some of the best innovative solutions to work on them. One of the things we encourage them to do when they identify problems is to identify problems that are within their reach. So a lot of times we'll have students come in or participants come in from different departments, and when we start talking about problem finding, they'll say, well, we have a problem with communication at the city. That's going to be our problem statement. Or we have a problem with the homeless, camping out in parks. We're going to work on that problem. Now, a lot of these are really huge, big, hard to define problems. And we really work with these groups to kind of narrow it down and bring it down to the level of their department or the interdepartments that are working on the teams to identify a right now problem that exists. And some of those problems have been anything from someone in our planning department realizing that they were taking 9 sets of copies for plan amendments from contractors that were coming in. And they realized that because of the document retention standards we have here at the city, that they had to store all these, and contractors were coming in, they were angry all the time. So one of the employees decided, I have an idea. We only need 2 copies because we do everything electronically now, but we've always done it this way. So for a couple of weeks, I'm just going to take that down, and we're only going to request 2 copies and see what happens. No resources, no funding, and didn't even need permission from their supervisor. Well, after 2 weeks of this experiment, this particular employee he came back and told me, he said, Tom, he says, I tried this, and he said, you would not believe, he said, the contractors started coming in. I said, oh, you're kidding, you only need 2 copies? He said, this is great. And he said, I was asking, well, what's the big deal about it? Because he said, our concern was we don't have a place to store all these. And he goes, well, you don't understand. Every time we bring in 9 copies, these submittals, it costs us $500 to make a set. You just saved us like $400. And then one thing led to another, and now that's the standard, and there's a new process put in place, and it just happened. These are the kind of things we are seeing with our employees. So some of the outcomes we're experiencing. We've had right now over 500 employees as of today trained in this program here at the city of Albuquerque. We are also, we've got over 250 projects. And, a lot of people say, oh my gosh, so many projects. Well, no, understand. The example I just gave you was an example of a project. We have people engaging in innovating and changing the way that, looking for efficiencies, changing the way we do things. And we have some folks that are working on some pretty large things as well. And of course, where I am right now and why we're here today is we're really, really committed to engaging other cities in the same process. This was really an interesting entrepreneurial test, if you will. Could we take a government agency, teach them to think like entrepreneurs, and actually increase our employee engagement? And we've proven the concept in our own entrepreneurial way, if you will. And with the perception of government right now, with how much responsibility we have in cities and states and counties and the federal government, and the responsibilities we have to serve the public, we have to find ways to be more efficient. We have to find ways to solve problems with the intellectual capital we have, with the people we have working for us now. So that's a commitment that we're committed to now. So a couple success stories. The person you see on your screen here, his name is Rob Vigil. Rob is one of our supervisors with our solid waste management department. And as you can see here in the quote, I love this quote. He says, I'm not a classroom guy, but learning that I can run my department like a business has changed the way that me and my guys get things done. Rob was very hesitant when he came to the first class, and he actually pulled me aside and he said, Tom, I'm not a classroom guy, and I just, our department is, kind of hard to work in, and I just don't know how this is going to help. And I told him, I said, just hang in there, just hang in there. After the first day of talking through the understanding the problem, the power to choose, I get to choose what my attitude is going to be and how I'm going to see problems as opportunities, which is the second lesson. He came to me the next week, and he told me, he said, Tom, I went and talked to my supervisor. He says, because I couldn't sleep all week. He says, I'm starting to see all of these things, in my department that need to be fixed, and I don't see them as bad things anymore. He says, I realize I can actually do something about them. And so within a short period of time, he told his boss that he wanted to try some things, and the supervisor said, great. And one thing led to another. Rob's actually been promoted twice since he finished this program in 2016. And one of the things that he did as his project is he worked with his drivers on his route to figure out how to improve the way that we were recycling and collecting recycling. And through just simple solutions of putting bins on the truck and taking bins to people that didn't have recycling bins and engaging them in the process, they were able to save thousands of dollars by lowering the cost per ton to recycle just on his route, just through using existing things that were already there and being willing to try and to test it out. So here's another one. This is Kelly Price. Kelly works for our risk management department. She's a safety specialist. One of the things that Kelly is responsible for is our defensive driving program. So if you're like us, in every other city, every other government agency, we have a city operator's permit that all of us are required to have to drive a city vehicle or to use our own vehicle for on city time. And so we have a class that runs every 2 weeks on certifying new employees, which we have about 20 new employees that come in the door every 2 weeks as well in our new employee orientation, plus recertifying every single employee every 3 years. This class every 2 weeks has right at 30 people in it, every 2 weeks consistently throughout the year. So Kelly came to me and she said, Tom, one of the things I think I want to do is I want to look at putting this program online for our recertification process. And I said, great. So she said, but I don't know how to do it. And I said, no problem. That's why we have a training department. We have existing resources. We'll support you in that. So she went back and she actually created a cost spreadsheet with a return on investment and went through and sat down and put together what it would cost to put the program online. And basically, she's going to save the city $70,000 a year in unnecessary training expenses as a result of putting it online. And now we're in the process of developing it online. And it's not costing a dime because we all are just using our existing resources and time. And then the last success story I want to share with you is Sara Mancini. Sara is she's the coordinator for the director of our Office of Neighborhood Coordination. She's responsible for overseeing and training and leading all of our neighborhood associations and neighborhood association presidents in the city of Albuquerque. So there's like 250 people that she's primarily responsible for just overseeing our neighborhood associations. And if any of you have ever worked with a neighborhood association, our presidents some of them are retired, some of them are doing this because, they just want to be engaged in, keeping speed bumps or getting speed bumps in their neighborhood. But a lot of times there's people that run these neighborhoods like their own little mini government. And so when Sara took the class, one of the things that was really powerful for her was this idea of having the power to choose and reacting or responding versus reacting, which we talk about in the program as well. And one of her commitments, one of the things she's responsible for is helping neighborhood associations engage in transforming their community. And right now, one of the biggest problems that we face is that neighborhoods expect the city to solve all their problems, when in reality, a lot of the problems that exist in neighborhoods could be solved by the neighborhood association with the support of the city. And what Sara is now being able to do is she's not only has a new method of training neighborhood association presidents how to run a meeting, how to recruit people to join, but also how to solve problems. She's using the Entrepreneurial Mindset program and the Discovery Campus process with her neighborhood association presidents as well. And what's happening is we're starting to see a transformation and in community engagement. So there's just a lot of amazing things that are happening here at the city. And, you know, if anyone has said, oh, could you have expected that this was going to happen when you tried this? We thought, well, wouldn't it be great if we could just if we could change our image in the community and allow the community to be able to see what it is we're doing and have our employees excited to come to work. That's a huge measure for us, but we're seeing so much more than that. We're seeing transformation happen in our culture, and if we know it can happen here, we know it can happen anywhere. So with that, let me just get out of my slide here and see if I can turn this back over to Gary. I just wanted to, for whatever reason, I'm not maximizing here. You still see me, Gary?
I do. I can change.
Yeah. So I was just going to say we're and I'll let you change you can change it from there. We're real excited about co-hosting this webinar and sharing what it is we're doing. But one thing that we're also really committed to and we're excited about talking to you about today is that, as Gary said before, we're co-hosting with Eli a facilitator training in the Entrepreneurial Mindset Program on the first week of August 1st through 3rd here in Albuquerque. And during that time, facilitators are going to be trained, and Gary will talk more about this in a second, but we're also going to get to talk about how to deploy this in the public service arena, because we're truly committed to transforming the culture and making a difference. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Gary.
Awesome. Thank you, Tom. That's super exciting. I get energized every time I hear you talking about the way this program's impacting. I would have never imagined, Tom, as I've said this to you before, I would have never imagined that this would work in that way. I mean, when you guys first came to me and said we want to teach city government workers how to think like entrepreneurs, you know, I, like a lot of people, thought, oh, that's not going to work. You know, that's just like impossible. That a city government worker is like the polar opposite of an entrepreneur. It just won't work. But really, Tom, it just sort of validated my core assumption that, you know, not everyone wants to start a business, but we all want to be engaged in our work.
Right.
We all want to be solving problems. We all want to, you know, have a voice and feel some autonomy in our day-to-day life. And I think that's really what it comes down to. So thank you for that, Tom. I'm just going to wrap up here really quickly, again, reiterating what Tom is saying, that we are excited to co-host the Entrepreneurial Mindset Facilitator Training in Albuquerque on August 1st through 3rd. You can register for that on our website. You can reach out to Tom or myself. My contact, we're at elimindset.com. If you click on events, you'll find the Albuquerque training. You can reach out to me at gary@elimindset.com, or Tom is jdarling@cabq.gov. So now I want to turn it over for questions. And if any of you want to turn your camera on, please feel free to do so. If not, there is a a question box in your control panel. You can type any questions you have in there, or you can just turn your camera on and ask away.
And actually, we can unmute you if you want to ask it verbally, because, yeah, I don't think they can unmute their microphones.
Right. Any questions?
Well, here's the question.
I know we did a good presentation. Okay. Lee, this sounds like it's for you, Tom. Lee's asking, what kind of pushback do you have when rolling this out?
So we were fortunate when we first began, because there was an opportunity when the mayor had heard about the program. Our economic development department actually had some funding to do this as one of their entrepreneurial initiatives with the city that originally paid for the funding. paid for the class, because the class is clearly less expensive when we do it internally than if we have the community college do it. Rolling it out, one of the things I'll share with you, we had as we started rolling it out to city employees once I was here, and we made it part of our cadre of training, and we started publishing it for employees to participate in. One of the department directors called me and he said, Tom, I've got 2 employees from our 311 call center that want to take this class, but my concern is that they're going to be in the class, for 4 weeks, and they're not going to be around and available. And I said, I understand that. And they said, I can't let 2 go, but I can let 1. And then she made a statement to me that was really, really, really valuable. She said, usually when we roll out training like this, we roll it out to all the supervisors first. And then what happens as a result, and then we go and we disseminate it, and we pick and choose. And I told her, I said, well, yes, I understand that. And I said, that's why some of this training fails. And I explained to her that, part of this training, this is a little different. As opposed to our required trainings, we have sexual harassment, our talent management, performance management, new employee orientation, some of those mandatory trainings. This is one of those trainings where the employee is actually working when they're in the class. They're actually working on solving problems for their department while they're in our class, and it's part of their work. And once we got through the first 100, actually it was less than that. The same department director contacted me after those 2 employees came back, and she shared with me. She said, Tom, she said, I don't know what you're doing in that class over there, but these employees are like taking responsibility, and they're not even coming and asking me anymore. And that's really the magic part is, all of our supervisors are doing not only their job, but they're also doing some of their employees' jobs. And so every time we have somebody go through the course and we have those departments come back to us, our solid waste director has put about 50 people through the course. And he told me a couple of weeks ago, he said, Tom, this is one of the best programs that my employees have ever gone through. He says they come back, they're energized, they're excited to come to work, they stop complaining. And we're hearing that from department after department after department. I know it sounds like a commercial, but just the ability to have an employee stop complaining and start taking action, that's helped us to get through the hesitancy around the training. And we have lots of training needs here, so this is an appropriate offering.
I want to just jump in. Tom, can you hear me, Tom?
Yeah.
Okay, so this really very, very exciting to hear those comments coming back. And I think it speaks to, goes back to the book that I wrote with Clifton about his life in the Mississippi Delta and the lessons that he learned from an unlikely entrepreneur. I mean, that's really, I think, what people identify with, is that when they can see a path, like even though they feel like they don't have power, they don't have authority, they don't have resources, they can still make things happen. That's where the energy comes from, in my view.
Any other questions? I can't hear you, Gary.
And in the attendee thing, and we'll unmute you. You can chime in there as well. I think you can raise your hand in there. Click on the little hand icon.
Oh, here's some more questions here from Kimberly. Hi, Kimberly. Thanks for being here today. What kind of buy-in did you need to get from your supervisors to support the program? Uh, so one of the things we've done, one of the things I did right away when I came on here is I went and met with all of our department directors for two reasons. Number one was to basically talk about Public Service University. We're unique because we have a training program within HR, and so we already offer some courses. But one of the things I did is I met with every single department director one-on-one and talked to them about this program, how much time it would take and what the outcomes were, so that they would understand the benefit that it would bring to the department. And this is something we don't talk about a lot, but the political benefit. Our city, if it's anything like yours, it's really, really interesting. How do you support an initiative? Well, it's got to be also, not only does it have to benefit the community, benefit the city, not cost a bunch of money, use existing resources, but it's got to be politically beneficial for the administration. And when there's a city engaging in innovation and people engaging in innovation and making things work and solving problems, that's an easy sell. And a lot of our directors, like I said, meeting with the directors, walking them through, helping them understand what the program is about and what those outcomes are, has been really, really helpful. We have 22 departments plus our 311. And, all I asked for when we first started, each time I ran a class, I said, I just want one employee in your entire department. And we'll have 25 people in a class based on our departments and our supporting departments. And it was an easy buy-in for a supervisor to say, oh, I can spare one employee. And now what we have is we have employees that are requesting it. We have employees going to their supervisors asking. We have employees going and also taking supervisors through it. We've taken a number of supervisors through the full 4-day course, not just the 2-day supervisor course, because we have like 10 layers of supervisor. And supervisors also have their problems as well. But when we get some of those low level supervisors in the class as well, especially when they've got some of their employees and they start working on some solutions, the buy-in becomes a lot easier. So hopefully that answered your question, Kimberly.
Yeah, I want to go pile on with that, Tom and Kimberly, or to any of you listening. I think I speak for both of us. If you have a request for a private webinar, if you want to bring a few of your team members to hear this message, we've recorded this webinar. We'll send you that in the follow-up. But if you'd like Tom and or myself to get on a webinar, if you want to kind of show this to more of your team members, I think we can arrange for that to happen. And Tom would probably be shaking his head, no, 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 if that weren't a possibility. So thank you for that question, Kimberly. But I like the way you talked about like selling that, Tom. It's like a soft sell. It wasn't coming in like a hammer down. You have to do
Right.
this. That was really a smart way to go about it. Really interesting. And I like how you get one guy from a department and let him go back and communicate the value of it to the rest of the department. And people start to get promoted. They start to see that,
Well, right. And that's just yes, there's promotion opportunity, but just to be able to communicate, how do I get my employees to use the money that we have, or to take a budget reduction and see that as an opportunity versus a problem? And we have so many resources in government, it's pathetic. I've been a self-employed entrepreneur. I worked at the community college for many years, as I said. I'm here at the city. If I need a computer, there's computers in somebody's closet down the hall in this building. We take for granted the way that we can bootstrap, the way that we can do things, and the freedom that we have here, that we work. And when we have employees that are performing at 30%, you have a lot of margin for problem solving and a lot of margin for being innovative. I mean, if I can get an employee to pick up trash on the way in because they realize that while it's not their job, it's part of the brand. This is how these things are happening. I mean, it's infusing all kinds of outcomes that we've seen this in other companies, and private companies need to think about these things in order to make money and and make their business work. Governments don't, because we get paid whether we do it or not, or we get voted out of office. But most of us that don't get voted out of office are still going to be here through the next 5 administrations. But wow, what happens when I get these people engaged and they start taking responsibility? The supervisor can actually have time to do what they're paid to do. And then there's all these things to brag about. And we also teach, we communicate this idea to our employees that, you know, part of this is we solve the problem, and then we help share the credit for the solution because it impacts the team. And that's a big deal in government. The frontline person rarely gets credit. The person at the top usually takes the credit. But when we change our mindset about how this works, it's really about, I want my job to be better. I want the outcomes to be better. I want to be happy when I come to work. We have low turnover here at the city and in government because everybody gets hired. 25 years, they get their retirement. Very low turnover. Really high job dissatisfaction. So if you're going to be here 25 years and stick around for that retirement, wouldn't you like to be excited when you came to work? And it's possible, and it's happening. Do
Tom,
we have
got
another
a question
down
from
there?
Robert. What was the biggest challenge you faced initially and now?
So my initial challenge was my first issue was, okay, is this really going to work? Are we going to see these outcomes? What happens when we get a new administration in, which we just did? We have a new mayor, different political party, started on December. It's like, you know, what if they have a different vision? But what we have found is, you know, this was not the brainchild of the previous mayor. This was the brainchild of a number of folks, and the previous mayor was part of that. The biggest issue is this is about changing our culture and building better employees. We were concerned about departments letting their employees go for that time. One of our benefits here is we have several other programs. We have a supervisory training program that we run for 5 weeks every Wednesday for new supervisors all day. We have a pre-management program for employees that want to be in leadership and supervisors one day, that they go through 1 day a week for a year. That has lots of training. We have Ice House embedded into both of those programs, by the way, to help them get 2 years of supervisory experience. So we had already had some training that required a full day of time. So it wasn't like it was a new thing to have an employee away for a day. But most of our departments, you know, we have some smaller departments, but when we have departments that have 100, 200, 300 employees in them, the biggest challenge, and this is not related, this is not just Ice House, this is employee training in general, is helping people understand that a trained employee is a more effective and more efficient employee. And if it takes a day or it takes 2 hours, we can't afford not to train an employee. And so that's part of, you know, the responsibility I have in running our training department. So there was the concern that we were going to be able to get people to fill a class. And another interesting issue that we had is we thought, well, we should offer these classes to different departments homogeneously. And I did one class where I offered it specifically to planning. Our planning department had 20 planning employees in the class. Class turned out great, but realized that having a class offered to one department took 20 people out of the department for a long period of time. And number two, there was no cross-departmental engagement, which is a big deal. One of the things we found when we have people from all the different departments participating in a class, sometimes the problem that one person from a department identifies, someone from another department who has a solution that they're already using communicates that, and sometimes those problems are solved in 1 day. So finding a way to make it palatable for people to be out of their job and in training is a challenge. But we have, you know, the thing is, you know, we can't afford not to train our employees. So we still do that. Is there a, there we go. There's
I
another
got a
question
couple
there too.
more here, Tom.
Okay, go
So
ahead.
what tools do you use to utilize to measure the success of the program? How are you measuring the success?
So right now, we did when we first started training this, we didn't really put in a measurement process because we were experimenting with it. And one of the things we quickly started realizing and seeing behavior change. We're in the process right now of looking into investing in Gallup's Q12 employee engagement survey process that we want to be able to use with everybody who goes to the program, so that we can have some data, to show how their positions changed before and after the program. The second thing, though, is we've really made a commitment to capturing and recording, the stories of all of our participants. What was the project they worked on? How were they received? When did they present it? When did they create it? And then keeping track of whatever that project is. Our supervisor development program is project-based. Our pre-management program is also project-based. And IceHouse, as I said, is embedded into those other two training programs. And, so we're keeping a record of all of these projects that people are working on and what phase and stage they are in. We're also collecting information from our department directors and supervisors attached to their performance management. So we were responsible for rolling out our talent management system, and PSU, Public Service University, was the main training mechanism for that. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to collect information as well on employees that have been through the program and how it's improved their performance, as well as employees and their promotional status, if they've taken the class or not, to determine if what they've learned in the class helped them to promote. So we're looking at their projects, we're looking at their promotional status, we're looking at their performance, and we're getting ready to start really tracking their engagement from using the Gallup tool. So that's what we're doing as far as tracking. And there was another question there too as well, right?
How are departments sustaining this and maintaining the momentum over time? From Lisa.
Hi, Lisa. So one of the things, obviously working with the department directors is really critical. The employees come here to get trained. When the employees go through and get trained, they go back to their areas and their jobs, and then they innovate within their jobs. And then those supervisors are watching that transformation take place. When we are training supervisors and leaders and directors at the higher levels that are working on larger problems, part of what we're trying to do is to help them to develop to be aware, number one, to be aware of what it is their employees are doing, and we're providing that information back to those departments. And of course, these projects, these are things that we should be doing anyway. We have large projects that are going on. What we're trying to do is to take the IceHouse to some of our larger projects and use the Discovery Canvas process before we create a proposal to buy a new piece of software. Before we invest in going to the neighborhood to create a rapid transit system, to apply some of these principles even at that top level. Each of our departments has a training budget. We also are funded through the HR, Human Resources budget. So there's a lot of training we offer to employees. We have material costs associated with this class, and we charge the departments for the cost of the materials, and then they come and they take the class. And because we're internally and we have our own budget, we can do that. But right now we have departments that are using lots of their training dollars for outside consultants to come in to work on various projects. And one of the things we're trying to get away from is all the duplication that's happening from department to department, trying to change culture around what we're doing. So that's how we fiscally sustain this. And we're embedding it in our other training programs. So it's not just The program is not just standing alone. It's now embedded in our management training. It's embedded in our supervisory training. We're starting to cover a little bit of it in our new employee orientation. So they get a taste for it and they understand, from day one, we expect you to solve problems, and we're going to give you permission to look for innovative ways to do that. So trying to ingrain it in our culture is really going to sustain the program long term. So it's not just a standalone flavor of the month. We see this a lot in higher education and other places. Oh, this is the new thing we're doing now. We really want this to be embedded in the culture of everything we do.
Tom, so Darcy, cleverly from Seattle, emailed me a question.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, do you get pushback from supervisors about employees running amok with their newfound empowerment? Great question, Darcy.
And if you could take any reaction from my hysterical laughter, yes, we've had that. We actually had an employee. Give you a couple examples. We had an employee go through the program. This is when we did the planning department in a homogenous group. We had an employee that were sharing problems that existed in their department that they wanted to solve. Well, they came back to the class the second day and they said, Tom, I'm not going to share anything in class anymore. I thought, whoa, what are you talking about? They said, well, I got back to my office and one of the other supervisors that was attending the class heard me talking about this problem, went to my supervisor and said, do you know that they're talking about this problem in this class? And my supervisor pulled me in and said, don't you talk about what's going on in our department. That's nobody's business, And so the minute that she shared that with me, I said, okay, number one, I'll take care of that. Number two, this is not the point of this class. So I called that department director and I met with the director and I said, so here's the deal. We're empowering employees to solve problems. You've been in the news 3 times in the last month. I need you to talk to the supervisor, and I need you to tell the supervisor to back off. And the director did. This is why we created a 2-day version for supervisors, and we're making it part of our supervisors are required to have 16 hours a year of continuing education, professional development training, and just so happens the 2-day Ice House training is 16 hours. And what we're teaching them in the 2-day version is basically, hey, this is what we're teaching our employees. Do you really have time to micromanage your employees? Do you want, we need you to empower your employees and support them. We need you to let your employees, and teaching them how to value their employees so that their employees don't complain, show up on time. I mean, this is really the things, the complaints we get. We're not asking employees to run amok. We're asking employees to identify things, to validate them, test them, and then when they go to their supervisor, instead of going to the supervisor saying, hey, I've got an idea, which for any supervisor, when an employee comes and says, hey, I have an idea, what they're really saying is, hey, I have an idea for you to add to your already busy schedule. And what we want our employees to do is say, hey, I have an idea. Let me go see if this will work within my managing authority. And then if I test it and I get some feedback, then I can go tell my supervisor, hey, I've been trying this. I'm not breaking any laws. I'm not violating any policy. We're very, very intentional about understanding what our policies and procedures are, because we don't want our employees going there. And so our supervisors we take to the class, they say, they get it. We have control freaks and we have people. That's our biggest new target now for transformation is the mid-level supervisor, because that we've determined that the problem in government is not just at the top. We find actually with our directors, they're all doing their job and doing the best they can. I'm leaving out the elected officials, by the way. And our frontline employees, for the most part, are doing everything they can, with the exception of the 3% that are getting by, or the 30% that are disengaged. The biggest problem we have is in our mid-level supervisors, because some of those people should never have been put there. Some of those people got there because they've been here forever. And when you have 5 layers of supervisors, this supervisor is worrying about what this supervisor is going to say, and then they're worrying about what their employees are going to say, and we're trying to help them to we're trying to reprogram them in the way that they look at their employees. So, but it has happened. It's fun. I think it's fun.
Yeah.
So,
well, the other way I want to address Darcy's question also, Tom, is, as I said earlier when I was kind of going through the 8 life lessons, we're advocating for micro experimentation.
Yeah.
And that's really part of the entrepreneurial story. You don't come up with an idea and go running off the edge of a cliff.
That's right.
You come up with an idea and you do these micro experiments. So like no one's really going off the ranch too far. That's how entrepreneurs, that's a survival mechanism of the entrepreneur. It's like micro experimenting until as you get closer and closer to a real solution, it starts to grow incrementally.
Mm-hmm.
So it prevents kind of the off the rails kind of the running amok.
And Gary, there's so much low hanging fruit in each department that we don't need to worry about, finding another place to purchase paper. No, I mean, there are so many things that are just hanging down and getting in the way that if we get employees to start focusing on them, we completely transform their department.
So you're saying it's an opportunity-rich environment, is what you're saying?
Oh yeah, that's the classy way to say it.
Yeah. Good. Tom, we've gone over a little bit here. I want to make sure that any other questions. I don't see any in the question and answer box. Again, I just want to wrap up and thank all of you for spending time with us this afternoon or this morning, wherever you are in the U.S. Hope to see you at our August training in Albuquerque. And I think, Tom, you're going to bring some of the case studies into the training, so you'll be able to interact with people that have been through the program themselves. And again, if you have any follow-up, you can find us at elimindset.com. My contact information, Tom's contact information is there. We'll send these slides, a link to the recorded webinar, and a follow-up email. So thank you all for participating in this webinar. Very much appreciated. Hope to see you all in August in Albuquerque.
And we'll be keeping in touch with you all with information, because I know it takes time to plan for the training and to get that all through. So we'll keep in touch with you, and please feel free. You can contact me anytime, and I would love to share as many stories as I can and be supportive. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.